Welcome to the Crush It in Sales podcast. I'm your host, Melinda Van Fleet. This podcast focuses on the intersection of sales, leadership, and personal development. Now let's get ready to dig in and crush it. Welcome, everyone. This week I have special guest speaker, Alexa Carlin. And not only is Alexa a speaker, but she is the founder and CEO of WEX, which we refer to a lot in this podcast. And WEX is a women's event. It stands for Women Empower X. And I attended it last November in Fort Lauderdale. It was a great event, very well put together, lots of amazing speakers and vendors. It was just a one-day event. And at the end of the event, she had a class for speakers, like an extra thing that you could attend. And she spent over 2 hours giving all of us tips and ideas. And she critiqued my one sheet, which, if you don't know what that is, that's a resume for speakers, just in simple layman's terms. And that was great to get her feedback and insight. So anyhow, I've been following Alexa. I took her course and was just really excited when she said that she would be on the podcast. So she shares just a lot of tips. She talks about her challenges. She talks about her health challenges and how she would recommend someone who is just starting out what they should do, which is always really great advice, especially since I think a lot of people are starting over or looking at starting over with everything that's kind of going on, maybe coming up with a plan B or even a plan C, not so bad to have nowadays. So I hope you love this podcast. And as always, I appreciate it when I hear that you share with a friend, family member, or coworker. And also check out my other podcast, The Good Karma Success Coach. I dive more into personal development versus business in that podcast. So I would love to hear from you. Please feel free to give me a shout out. So let's get on to the podcast. I hope you enjoy it. Thanks for listening. Hi, Alexa. How are you today?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm great. I am so excited that you could be on my podcast. It was such a great opportunity that I was able to go to WEX in Fort Lauderdale last fall and got to meet you, and you critiqued my one sheet, and I've been following you and did your course. And I'm just really happy that you're able to spend this time with myself and the audience today and share any tips and tools that you have to help us through what's going on and inspire us for the future.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for being part of my community and coming out to WEX and investing in your growth. It was awesome to meet you there and stay connected and grow.
That's cool. Thank you. Do you mind sharing a little bit about your journey? I know your journey is quite extensive, so feel free to share whatever you wish with the audience. I think they would really be inspired by hearing what you've been through and also how you started WEX.
Yeah, definitely. So I've been an entrepreneur since I'm about 17 years old, when I started my first business in high school, designing jewelry for an LA-based fashion company. And I did this because I was really inspired by their mission to use fashion as a way to build schools in Africa to help different villages become self-sustainable. And I saw that they were only selling t-shirts and this tote bag. And I was really passionate about fashion. And so I ended up becoming the sole licensee at 17 to design jewelry for this LA-based fashion company that was supported by Jennifer Aniston, Zac Efron, Courtney Cox. And that was my first real dive into entrepreneurship. And I fell in love with turning an idea into reality. And it's always been my mission since then to really make a difference in at least one person's life a day. I fully believe in the power of the individual. And so all of my ventures since then have had that mission, have had that give back. And so I took this business when I went to the University of Florida, and I was running this whole business out of my dorm room. After class, I would ride my bike to the post office to ship out, orders. And I learned about drop shipping. I developed my first website myself by learning how to code and use the free service iWeb that came with my computer, and really just kind of figured it out. I mean, I printed the hang tags from Office Depot. And again, I didn't know how to do any of this, but one step at a time, I figured it out because that mission, that passion was really powerful, and I felt like I had to do something. And I shared that part because I, people always, see the end result and they think that someone knows something that's secretive or this secret strategy, and there literally is no secret to success. It's just trying it, pivoting or perfecting the strategy, tweaking it and continuing. But the biggest thing is just getting started. And that first business actually led me to starting a blog in college. And this blog had the mission to instill confidence in young girls and women, because that's one thing that I struggled with growing up. I went through my own share of bullying, self-doubt. And my mom always taught me, like, if I could give you anything, I hope to give you confidence. And she really taught me, about confidence, even during, the years when you're struggling with it the most. But I saw, especially going into college, and having a business now, that confidence was one of the biggest things that was holding me back. I wouldn't talk about what I was doing with other people. I just wanted to kind of fit in, make new friends. And I saw this is going to stop me if I don't really learn how to gain this skill. So through this blog, I started asking people their definition of perfect as a way to redefine it, to show that there's not one meaning for the word. And I got tons of different celebrities to join on the movement: Mark Cuban, Shaquille O'Neal, Steve Madden, Rebecca Minkoff, Mark Jacobs, so many different people. And again, all of this was just through, like, running into them when I was interning in New York City and working up the courage to talk to them, or, they came to speak at my university and I got up on the mic during Q&A time. So it was all just random occurrences that I took my shot and got them to join onto this movement. And through this experience, I started to gain the skill of confidence. I started to learn more about myself, about what I wanted. But as I was growing this now for about 2.5 years, I was a few months away from graduating college now. And all of a sudden, bacteria got into my bloodstream out of nowhere. And I was rushed to the hospital and induced into a medical coma, given a 1% chance of living.
Wow.
Now that completely changed my life. Like, 1 second, I'm this healthy, happy-go-lucky 21-year-old. And the next, the doctor's telling my mom, call your family. She has 24 hours.
Wow. Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I'll edit this. Do they know how you got it at all, the bacteria?
So they had different, they were testing different things. They had the different bacteria, my mom said, in like all these different containers. And some, they never really found out the cause. It could have been from an undetected UTI. It could have been from the flu, because I got the flu shot like a week before this happened. So I don't know if I was already sick with the flu and then I put the flu shot. So they aren't sure about that. But then 6 months after I was in a coma for 6 days, in the ICU for 10. And that was in January, end of January to February. Then I graduated college in May, moved to New York City because I had a job set up at InStyle magazine. It was like my dream job at this fashion magazine. But then in August, I ended up getting really sick again, and I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease.
Oh, wow.
And so some doctors will say, oh, well, you had this dormant in your body and that could have caused it. So again, it was all different speculation, never really found out where the bacteria came from, but it definitely was frightening, especially during this time. I was living on a ventilator and I couldn't breathe. And I ended up getting severe pneumonia as they were filling my body with fluids before they knew my body was going into septic shock. So all of that definitely not only changed my life, but completely, like, it changed everything. It not only just what I experienced in the coma, but also now living with this autoimmune disease, which has been so hard, so challenging to deal with. It was 4 years before I actually got my life a little bit back. And, on autoimmune, it's chronic. So I still have good days and I still have bad days, but I'm definitely way healthier than I was 3 years ago. And so when I was working to try to heal my body, I ended up becoming a certified holistic health coach. I wrote a cookbook because I was like healing my body through vegan food and gluten-free food. And again, always still trying to turn a negative into a positive because that's kind of just who I've always been. But this also led me to sharing my story because I felt like, all right, this had to happen for a reason. And I'm going to go on this journey of curiosity to find out what that reason may be. And so I started by sharing my story. And when no one would allow me to speak at their events, they for free when I was first starting out, I decided, you know what, I'm going to put on my own event. So I started up a meetup group locally in South Florida when I was living there at the time. My first event had 5 people show up, and I was so excited. And my next event had 15 people. The next event had 30 people. Soon enough, then people in my audience, they started asking me to speak at their own events. And I spoke for free for about a year until I got my first paid gig, which was off Twitter. And it was like $500 plus a hotel room in Orlando, Florida. And I was so excited.
Yeah.
And that really, led to that momentum effect of speaking more. And I always say this, like, speaking is such a game of momentum. The more you speak, the more you will speak, for free or paid, or, depending on what your goals are. But I just kept on doing that. And through that, I saw the need for diverse women to connect, because I would be speaking to all these different events and it was all women so niched off, like just millennials or just women further along in their career or just women part of the tech sector or whatever it may have been. And nobody knew each other. And this was a local community in South Florida. And I just thought that was so crazy to me. And I truly believe that in order for us to create real change, we have to connect and collaborate with diverse people. And so that led to the inspiration behind what is now Woman Empower X.
Wow, that's amazing. Your journey is so inspiring. When you mentioned no secret to success, it's so true. And people really don't talk about that enough. And I'm so glad too that you talked about, you just took charge and made your own path. You just really created your own path with the conference. Now, what cities is WEX in? I know Fort Lauderdale, obviously.
Yes. So we started in Fort Lauderdale and then we took it to Washington, D.C. And then last year we took it to Raleigh, North Carolina, since I live here now. And then earlier this year in February, right, actually before the whole coronavirus started to spread, we hosted in Los Angeles, California.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. 4 already for such a young company. That's really cool. What would you say have been some challenges in getting it started, getting it up and running from like a business perspective? And how have you overcome those challenges?
That's a really good question. There's been so many challenges. I would say the biggest challenge when starting out was just marketing the event. Because there's so many, events out there and there's so many events that are targeting women. And so how can we rise above that noise? But also I didn't have any marketing budget. So we were going against companies that spend 100,000 plus on Facebook ads to market their events. And I had $200. So that was very challenging. And I did what I've always done through every venture is use the resources I had. And so that was my voice, my story, my why, and social media organically. And that's how I grew WEX. So it was speaking everywhere and anywhere possible. And it was never selling from the stage. It was sharing my story, my journey, and the reason behind WEX and why I think everyone should attend. And that's really how it grew. And it spread like, word of mouth has been our biggest marketing vehicle from, speaking and being authentic and vulnerable. And so I would say that's been the biggest challenge, because to get 1,000+ people to an event is really difficult. But I saw that power in speaking. And then the other challenge is just cash flow, management. That's something new. I never ran a company of this size before. And so learning how to manage cash flow, because we're completely self-funded, and I started with just $2,000 from savings from my other ventures. And we've been running on positive cash flow since, but learning how to do that, definitely challenging. And I would say the biggest factor towards why we were successful versus why so many events and people that I see wanting to put on events, whether it's one-off event or an event company, they lose a lot of money. And there's a way to do it where you either break even because you're doing it to market your products or whatever it may be, or to profit from it. And the biggest thing is knowing how to negotiate. And I think that's so important, to learn how to negotiate when you're starting up a business.
That's great. That's really great advice. Thank you for sharing. I loved your Instagram post. So very happy with the synchronicity of the universe that your Instagram post with your top 10 hindsights. And I don't know if you have your phone in front of you or if you remember all these by heart, but they were really cool. So I don't know what date this was, just to refer back.
It was like yesterday, I think.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So today is May 12th. So if you follow Alexa Rose Carlin on Instagram, and I'll put this all in the show notes, but this post is fantastic. It's probably one of my favorite posts I've seen in a very long time, that from memory.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, it was really cool. And I think it transcends, all sorts of businesses and even on a personal level. So would you mind kind of just walking through some of the highlights and sharing and giving a little backstory?
Definitely. So the post is really geared towards empowering you to just start. And I share, how I started. So my first event, like I mentioned, had 5 people show up. My first speaking gig, I forgot everything I was going to say while I was on stage, and I turned bright red. My first Instagram post had 10 likes. My first TikTok video had 20 views and 0 comments. My first blog, my mom and best friend were the only readers. And my first business, I handmade the products and sold them to my mom's friends. So that really, I share that, and I'm sure I even have more examples, but because the biggest thing that holds people back is the overwhelm of starting. It's thinking you're either, you don't have enough resources or knowledge about it. You don't know even where to begin and can't create that action plan. Or 3, you have self-doubt, and you are like held back by this overwhelm, right? If you think about, all right, I'm going to create a fashion line. All of a sudden you start thinking about everything you have to do. It is overwhelming. And that overwhelm creates inaction. And it also leads to self-doubt, which is something we really want to step away from, especially in the beginning, because it definitely stops a lot of people. Mm-hmm. And so you have to realize that you're always going to have to start from ground zero, not ground 1, ground 0, meaning like you could do your first Facebook Live and have 0 people watching. And regardless of if you've been an entrepreneur or a side hustler or a freelancer or a coach or whatever it may be for an amount of years, if you're going after a new project, a new industry, a new idea, it's still working from ground 0. So understand that you're going to have to start sometime, and it's going to still be at ground 0. So just, you have to move past that and start so you can get to that next level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, and that's it. People get afraid and really get bogged down in all the details, and they're just that's their justification for not starting then. They kind of make excuses and, they end up, time goes by really fast, right?
Definitely. Time goes by
So,
really fast.
yeah. So how would you say, just if someone were looking to start a new business, just what's like 3 simple ways to just get some momentum and get the ground moving? Like, where would you tell them to head to?
So the first thing you should always focus on is your why, right? Why are you doing this? And if you say, "Oh, well, it's a good business opportunity for money," then you got to think again, because you can make any idea a successful one, but it gets really challenging. So the first thing is to make sure your why is very powerful. If you are thinking about it and it makes you cry, it's a good idea. If you're thinking about it and it doesn't make you cry, you may want to try something else. And when I say cry, it doesn't have to be literally like tears, but you have to feel it real deep down. So I would say that's step number one. Because I've even felt this recently. Like, there's so many opportunities out there. Well, how do you pick one?
Mhm.
And I could be successful doing drop shipping e-commerce stores. I could be successful like selling shirts on Etsy. There's all these different ideas, but when it comes down to it, do you want to work on those things every single day in and day out? And so that's step number one. Step number two is, again, to really pick a niche and focus. Early on in my career, I was so all over the place. I'm still trying to figure out how to even get more focused, because as a passionate individual, which I'm sure a lot of listeners are that you have on your podcast, it's hard to just pick one thing, because it's like, we're passionate about this and this and this. And so I created this idea called the domino effect. And when I was just starting WEX, I had a lot of other things going on. I had an idea. I wanted to write a book. I wanted to create an online course. I wanted to grow as a public speaker, and I wanted to grow WEX. And that was my list out of like 20 other things that I put it down to. And I was like, all right, I'm just going to focus on these 4 things. And I looked at them and I'm like, well, all 4 things take 50 plus hours a week to bring it to life and make it successful. So that's not focused enough. And so what I looked at, I was like, all right, well, I believe that you can achieve everything in your life, maybe just not all at the same time. Mm-hmm. And so I looked at what the biggest domino would be. So just as you would stand up dominoes, you hit one and it helps knock down the rest. What is that in your goals? And so for me, I chose WEX, because WEX created a platform and community for me. So to have a book deal, you need more followers nowadays. To grow a course, it's easier to sell a course when you have a community. To grow as a speaker, it's easier to grow as a speaker when you have some type of credibility as a founder, as some experience, right? So now I could help perfect my speeches through my own events. So that's what I looked at, and that's what I went all in on in the last 3 to 4 years. And now, we have an online course, and I'm diving into some other things, but definitely pick a niche and pick one thing to focus on first. And then the third thing I would share is to really think about what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are. And the same thing is like what you enjoy and what you don't enjoy doing, and go all in on your strengths. Really don't think like, oh, I'm not good at this, so I can't create this business, because you can always delegate that out and hire people later on. So think about your strengths and what can you create a business around that really highlights your strengths as well as the things that you enjoy doing.
Wow. No, that's awesome advice. Thank you so much. And the why in regards to the cry, that just really makes a lot of sense. And when I think about my why, you're right. I get tears in my eyes. So yeah.
Right. See?
I think that's a really good way to help edit and narrow down and really get to the core of what you're here on this earth to do. So that's very cool. Thank you for sharing. And kind of before we wrap up, I'd love to know, like, what are your goals? Like, what are you working on? Might be just one goal to get through the year in regards to focusing and everything that's happened, but share a little bit about where your journey is, where you're headed.
Yeah, so definitely things have changed a lot since I set our January goals with the coronavirus. So we were planning to put on 3 to 4 events this year, and obviously that's changed, as well as all my speaking engagements got postponed. So, the being in the in-person events industry, it's been tough. And so there's one goal that we had in January that we were going to do this year. And now it just, again, trying to find the light in the darkness, it gives us more time to go after that goal without these events going on right now. And so that's, creating a digital platform to connect the WEX community and help each person individually further their goals. So we're working on creating, taking basically the best parts of our in-person events online, and not so much as an online conference. Well, we very much may have a virtual conference down the road, but more as a resource for women like us, women that we want to connect with people, we want to feel supported, and we also want to grow. So deeper in knowledge regarding different aspects of growing a business, is growing your brand. And so that's really my main goal, is kind of figuring out where we can provide the most value for our community and launching that this year.
Oh, I love that idea. And I'm so glad I'm part of your community. Selfishly.
Yes.
That is fantastic. What a cool goal and original. And I love Facebook groups, but yeah, you don't quite get as much as maybe we'd all like to get out of something like that. So kudos to you. What question do you wish people would ask for and ask you about? I'm going to pause a second. What question do you wish people would ask you? And then please share how everyone can get in touch with you.
Oh, that's such a good question.
I know. I just saw that the other day and I was like, I need to ask this to Alexa. I think are just cool, and see what else you'd love to toss to us.
Yeah, actually, I just thought of one. All right. So, and this probably will change if, people ask me this down the road, but right now what I'm feeling, I'll just go with it. I would say I wish people would ask me how they can find hope. Ooh. And I think that's an important question, because we're kind of brought up, regardless of what you believe, to always have hope, have faith, right, in the future. And I think that's really relevant for everything that everyone's going through right now. And the reason I say I wish people would ask me that is because for a very long time, I could not find any hope. When I was struggling with my autoimmune, I had everything, or I felt like I had everything taken from me. I had to move home from New York City and give up my dream job. I couldn't go out with my friends. I couldn't eat really any food that I've ever eaten before. I was too sick to even walk my dog outside. Like, everything was just taken from me at 22 years old. And I couldn't find the light at the end of the tunnel, because this was something that I knew there's no cure for, and I would have to live with for my whole life. And when you go 8 months, a year, 2 years down the road and nothing's working, it's really, really difficult to have hope. But I was so young, and I was like, I can't go on the rest of my life with this mindset and feeling this way. And so what I did intuitively was I traded out hope for curiosity. And I said, all right, well, if I don't have hope, I can have the curiosity asking what may happen if I don't give up. And that curiosity led me to feel like, all right, one more day, one more breath, one more step, and And that curiosity led me to discovering that hope within me. But I think that's really important. So if you can't find hope, people say, just have hope, have faith, trust, we need to do that in order to go on, in order to get through a lot of the challenging times that we're all experiencing throughout our life. But if you can't find that, at least be curious enough to ask yourself, what may happen if I don't give up?
Wow. That's very cool. And I wrote that down too. Again, what may happen if you don't give up? Because a lot of people are going to be struggling and thinking that there's no hope. So how do you keep going? Thank you for sharing that. Thank you.
Definitely.
Awesome. How can the audience find you and connect?
So you could connect with me on social media. I'm at Alexa Rose Carlin all over social. I'm mostly active on Instagram and TikTok, Alexa Rose Carlin. And to learn more about WEX and stay connected with us as we roll out some of these digital offerings, please sign up for our email list, and you could check out everything we're doing at Women Empower X. That's just the letter X.com. Awesome. And we have everything there.
That's cool. Now, do you dance on TikTok? Because I'm not on TikTok. So
I incorporate, to grow on TikTok, you do kind of need to go with some of the trends and some of the trending songs. And I love dancing. I used to be like, this was like when I was in middle school, I used to be like in competitive hip hop dancer. Oh, again, wow. A long time ago, but I do love dancing. So I do it because I really enjoy it, but you don't have to. Actually, a lot of people I follow don't do the dancing. But when I do learn a trending dance, I add my own niche to it. So if I'm focused on inspiration and business, and so I'll do a dance and I'll put words that go with the beat that pop up. Like, for example, the Instagram post that we talked about where it shows like how I started. Mm-hmm. I did that same thing on TikTok, but I did one of the trending dances, and with every clap, a new line came up on text. So it would say like, it would say, think you aren't ready to start a business, ... And I'm dancing. And then when the next clap or beat goes, it would say, my first event had 5 people. And the next beat goes, my first TikTok had 20 views. And the next beat goes. So then I'm still within my niche.
Oh, that's fantastic. Oh my gosh, what a great idea. I'm going to have to check it out. That's awesome.
Yeah, definitely check it out. It's fun. Awesome. I like TikTok.
Yeah. Oh, and since I know, just one more thing. Are you going to get back into fashion since it's such your passion? And I just rhymed and I really didn't mean to, but
yeah, no. That's a good question. I actually, earlier this year, we launched our first e-commerce store with WEX. And so kind of starting in that realm, we're designing t-shirts that are for, the entrepreneur, the woman in business, the person that wants to really wear what you stand for. So we have just a few designs right now, but we have a few collections. One's the Equality for All collection, where all of our stuff just says equality for all. Another one is the It Only Takes One, which goes back to the one idea, one action step, one decision, and really empowers you to keep on going. And then the other collection, what's our other collection? Oh, the Female Entrepreneur collection, where female is crossed out. Because when people would say, oh, she's a great female entrepreneur, I'm like, well, I'm just a great entrepreneur. Like, why do I have to be just a female entrepreneur? So, I think we should, especially women, we shouldn't say she's good for a woman in business or good as a female entrepreneur. You are great as an entrepreneur, period. So that's that collection. So I'm kind of getting into the fashion world on that end online.
Wow. Through your way, your path, and your brand. That is fantastic. And yes, thank you for that whole women entrepreneur call out, because you're right. It's, and I think it's amazing too on LinkedIn. Often like the chat, the comments will get all fired up because people will be like, why can't we just say that we're fabulous entrepreneurs or fabulous business people? So yeah, you got it. Thank you. Well, I hope everyone, I hope everyone stayed to the end of this podcast. It's like one of those movies that you go see and the credits roll. And then at the end is like all the really juicy stuff that they saved. So you added some more fun stuff. I appreciate that. That's awesome.
Definitely. I'm always an overshare usually.
No, that's great. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I really appreciate your time and enjoyed chatting with you. It's been super fun. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.